who died on duty in Ukraine. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. Can I congratulate Glastonbury's Lando Norris on becoming the 11th British driver to win the Formula One World Championship, and also everyone at McLaren's in Woking who powered him to the title. Mr. Speaker, President Trump's new national security strategy is a deeply alarming document. Quite apart from the irony of President Trump accusing others of trampling on basic principles of democracy, it repeats far-right tropes of civilizational erasure and threatens that the US government will cultivate resistance in Europe. No wonder Vladimir Putin has welcomed that strategy. So will the Prime Minister pick up the phones and make it clear to President Trump that any attempts to interfere with our democracy are totally unacceptable?
Can I join him in congratulating Lando for the incredible win? I went down to Woking on Monday to see some of the team at McLaren, and they're all wearing the pride that brought with them. On the question of Europe and President Trump's comments, what I see is a strong Europe, united behind Ukraine and united behind our long-standing values of freedom and democracy, and I will always stand up for those values and those freedoms.
And David.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear about standing up to President Trump. And if we're going to stand up to President Trump, we do need to strengthen our ties with Europe, not just on defence, but on the economy too. And the truth is, this government will not succeed unless it gets our economy growing strongly again. And the best way to do that is a customs union with Europe. The Prime Minister's chief economic advisor knows it. The Deputy Prime Minister knows it. And yesterday, the Labour chair of the Treasury Select Committee showed she knows it too when she backed our bill. Does the Prime Minister fear that if he keeps opposing a customs union, in 12 months' time, he will not be standing there?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have got a close relationship with the EU through our reset earlier this year. And yes, I do want a closer relationship than the one we've got at the moment. We are moving towards that. We do have manifesto commitments on issues such as single market, customs union and freedom of movement. But I would gently point this out, that having now done significant trade deals with other countries, including the US and India, which are hugely important to the JLR workforce and on pharma, it is not now sensible to unravel what is effectively the best deal with the US that any country has got.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Working in NHS, I saw the consequences of Tory underinvestment in our health service. I welcome the progress under this Labour government, falling waiting lists, higher patient satisfaction with the general practice, and the rollout of neighbourhood health centres announced in the budget. I thank the frontline staff, including in mental health and community services, for all their hard work, and I am especially grateful to all the staff at the William Harvey Hospital in Nashford who turned up to work during the last BMA-led resident doctor strike and ensured that so many planned appointments went ahead. With rising hospital admissions because of flu and increased demand on A&E services, does the Prime Minister agree that the BMA should call off their next planned strike and instead work with the government to find a solution?
Well, Mr. Speaker is right. Waiting lists are falling with over 5 million extra appointments. More people are being seen within 18 weeks. And we've hired 2,600 new GPs. That's real progress thanks to the hard work of NHS staff, backed by our record investment. I do think the strikes are unjustified and they threaten that hard-won progress, and the focus should always be on patients.
Samuel Roberts.
He just said, the Prime Minister, that he wanted a closer relationship with Europe, but then referenced the Labour Party manifesto. Wales has been hardest hit by Brexit. Exports are down by a third. When will he admit that the only solution to the chaos imposed by Brexit is to rejoin the customs union and the single market, or is he too afraid of what his party might say.
Mr. Speaker, I went to Solihull to see the JLR workforce before we got the deal with President Trump. They were worried sick that they were going to lose their jobs, and that would be a loss for them, their families and their communities. I took the call from President Trump when we got the deal in Solihull in JLR, so the first people I could tell were the workforce, who knew very well that that meant their jobs were safeguarded. We've also just done a deal on pharma, which is the first of its kind in the world and the best of its kind in the world. It is not sensible or fair to the JLR workforce or to the pharma sector to say, having achieved those things now, we should unravel them by discussion about a customs union. I just don't think it's a sensible way to take our country forward.
Justine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of the almost 1 million young people not in education, employment or training, hundreds of thousands are disconnected from the system entirely. Youth workers have a unique ability to bridge young people into support. I wouldn't be stood here today if I hadn't been supported by a youth worker called Russell when I dropped out of school. So will the Prime Minister use the National Youth Strategy to deliver a shared long-term vision for young people's outcomes, with good work as a central pillar and youth workers and trusted adults at its heart?
Well, I thank him for his question. The party opposite presided over a lost decade for our young people. I'm determined to support every young person to reach their potential. That's why we're delivering the first national youth strategy for 15 years to transform youth services, backed by over £500 million. Mr. Speaker, that means more youth workers, more youth centres and a network of 50 young future hubs. That's on top of our youth job guarantee and our plan to create 50,000 more apprenticeships. We're building a Britain for the next generation.
Second batting.
Mr. Speaker, over the coming weeks, millions of people from across the country will be visiting their local church. Churches are the custodians of our history and do enormous good. But in January, the government announced a £19 million cut to the listed places of worship granted, as well as putting a cap on the repair costs. This cut puts thousands of local churches at risk. And I say to the Prime Minister, if we lose our churches, we lose the very soul and essence of our communities. So as we go into Christmas, will the Prime Minister do the right thing? He has 10 at risk in his own constituency. Will he reconsider this policy so that we can save our churches?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we do support our churches and the work that those within our churches do, particularly in the lead up to Christmas, and I've got a reception for them in Downing Street this very afternoon.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before May's election, Reform in Kent promised that they would improve services and cut taxes. Instead, vital services to older people and those with a mental health condition provided by great organisations like Imago and Involve is to be cut and taxes are going up. Would the Prime Minister agree with me on two things? That given the additional money for the county through the Fair Funding Review, it's beyond belief that Kent are cutting services that vulnerable people rely on, and that their so-called DOGE unit, that we were told would eliminate waste, actually stands for deluded, overconfident, gormless and embarrassing.
Well, it sums up very well how his community have been utterly let down by Reform. Whilst the member for Clacton is making excuses about his behaviour at school, look at what his party are doing across the country. Chaos in Kent. In Hampshire, their mayoral candidate says the Deputy Prime Minister, a black British man born in this country, should go back to the Caribbean. In Staffordshire, Reform's leader has been exposed as a white supremacist. It's not a coincidence, Mr. Speaker, because chaos and division is the member of Clacton's life work.
We're a house.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Bath, parents of children with special educational needs, often very complex needs, are crying out for special school places. Funding to build a brand new special school at that Culver Hayside in Bath was secured, but the government has frozen the funding for almost 18 months without any explanation, leaving many families in the lurch. How much longer do families and children with special educational needs have to wait for this vital new school?
Well, I thank you for raising this, and we are working closely with local authorities on plans for special and alternative provision-free schools. We are keen to progress this, and I'll make sure that ministers update her in her particular case but we are determined to fix the SEND system that fails parents and fails children, and that's why we've launched a national conversation to put families at the heart of the lasting reform. We've already put money into extra new places, a language support and Best Start family hubs being rolled out across every area from April.
Christine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Blackburn, West Lothian, St Kentigern's Academy was part demolished due to rack and is being rebuilt, costing £35 million. West Lothian Council found £20 million from its own stretched budget, but despite repeated pleas to the Scottish Cabinet Secretary for Education, who called it the most deserving case, funding has not been delivered. Will the Prime Minister back my call for the Scottish Government to urgently fund the £15 million shortfall and raise it with the First Minister in their next meeting?
Well, can I thank her, because she's fought for her constituents on this issue for years, and meanwhile decades of SNP cuts and broken promises have left schools crumbling. Mr. Speaker, what a contrast. By the end of this Parliament, every school in England will either be rack-free or we will rebuild them entirely. We delivered the largest settlement for the Scottish Government in the history of devolution. So the question for the SNP is, after decades of decline, what is their excuse?
Dr. Luke Evans.
Mr. Speaker, I feel for the Prime Minister. It must be tough wherever he goes in the UK because of his policies. A pub, higher taxes. A restaurant, higher taxes. A cafe, higher taxes. A farm, higher taxes. A GP, higher taxes. A care home, higher taxes. A hospice, higher taxes. So, Mr. Speaker, is this the reason the Prime Minister chooses to spend so much time out of this country?
What a load of nonsense. Mr. Speaker, we are at a critical stage in progress in Ukraine that will affect Ukraine's sovereignty, the whole of Europe, and the values that we hold dear. We are part of one of the leading countries to strengthen NATO at a vital time for defence and security in Europe. And we've secured trade deals that they tried for years to achieve, but never did because of our international engagement. And we've got better relations with the EU, all of which is good for our country. Ridiculous question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The video games company Rockstar in my constituency last month fired 31 employees without providing evidence or union representation. The IWGB alleges union busting. Having met Rockstar, they failed to reassure me they are following employment law, and I share concerns about union busting. Given this government is responsible for the biggest increase in workers' rights in a generation, does the Prime Minister agree all companies, regardless of profit size, must follow UK employment law, and all workers have the right to join a union?
Well, it's a deeply concerning case. Every worker has the right to join a trade union, and we're determined to strengthen workers' rights and ensure they don't face unfair consequences for being part of a union. Ministers will look into the particular case that he raises and keep him updated.
Blake Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Digital ID is intrusive and fundamentally un-British. The government has no mandate for it. No sensible person believes it will tackle illegal immigration or illegal working. It's an attack on our open society and a staggering waste of taxpayers' money, isn't it?
Digital ID has huge benefits, as many countries in Europe are already demonstrating. And where they failed on our borders, we're taking control of our borders. I'm proud that we're doing so.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will know that SEND is in crisis across the country, but it's in particular crisis in Suffolk, where the County Council is in special measures for its failings. I'm delighted that the government has listened to one of my asks, which is to have a national conversation about SEND, so parents, young people and their advocates can have their voices heard. Will the Prime Minister back my call to make sure that we deliver the funding for the former Saxe-London Set School in Saxe-London that closed its doors for the last time in 2024?
Can I thank her? I know she's a dedicated campaigner on this issue, and I'll make sure ministers update her on the latest progress in her constituency. Our ambition is to make sure all children with SEND have access to the right support. That's why we're working closely with local authorities to deliver places where they're needed most.
Sarah Bull.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is always talking about the fair choices that it has made. But is it a fair choice to balloon the benefits bill? Is it a fair choice to introduce an unfunded and unwanted digital ID that will cost the public billions? And is it a fair choice to increase taxes on working people when the promise was not to? The answer, Mr. Speaker, is no. So can I ask the Prime Minister to consider one final... So can I ask the Prime Minister to give one final fair choice, thinking of food security and to avoid devastation for families across the country and reverse the family farm tax?
Mr. Speaker, welfare ballooned on their watch. When the Shadow Chancellor was responsible for welfare, it ballooned by £33 billion. They left a £22 billion black hole. The OBR reviewed and said they added £16 billion to that. We'll take no lecture from them on the economy.
Final question, Carl Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no denying that this government inherited a crisis in our criminal courts, with a number of cases waiting to be tried growing every single day. So if the Justice Secretary plan to do away with jury trials in some cases, in some cases, is really about addressing the backlog and getting the position to something manageable, then why isn't there a sunset clause? And why has that been ruled out?
Well, he's absolutely right to draw attention to the crisis in our courts. Yes, he says. Sir Brian Leveson is one of our most respected senior judges. He did an independent report, and he made clear that we risk, in his words, total collapse of the criminal justice system without change. That is what they're chuntering at. That is what they left. A system near total collapse, where victims of sexual violence and rape wait years to get justice. That is not justice, that is victims failed. I can reassure him, and I know he feels very strongly on this, that juries will remain a cornerstone of our justice system for the most serious cases.
Mr. Robertson. I don't want shouting like that again. Do we understand each other? Okay. Right. That completes Prime Minister's questions. Yeah. Order, Rachel Blake.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary has visited my constituency to make a political video for social media. He's undertaken videoed interviews with apparently no reference to the services available to tackle the issues that he's seeking to highlight. Mr. Speaker, I cannot accept his attempt to use the communities in Westminster and the City as a political football, and since before I was elected, I've campaigned for more local police officers and specialist outreach workers to tackle the very specific issues we're facing locally. And following my campaigning, the government has invested an additional £12 million into Westminster. And
I think we got the message. You're absolutely right with the first part. No, you don't go into full detail. You've made the point of order. The point of order is about somebody coming into another person's constituency. The answer is clear. Whichever side of the House they're on, whichever party you might represent, you have to allow the Member of Parliament notice that you are coming in. We've had it before, we don't need it, we're quite a long way for general election, so I am disappointed. You should always be informed of somebody coming in. Please, respect each other. Point of order, John MacDonald.
I don't like doing this, Mr Speaker, but I have to. I wrote on behalf of several members to the Secretary of State for Justice last Wednesday. It is in relation to the hunger strike that's taking place within our prisons at the moment by Palestine Action prisoners, some of whom now have been hospitalised. We wrote simply asking for a meeting with the Secretary of State. We've not received any response. I informed his office yesterday I'd be raising a point of order. We gave it another day. We still haven't had a response to that letter. This is a matter of urgency, and I would have expected at least the courtesy of some response, even if he's not willing to meet us.
Can I first of all say I thank the honourable member for raising his point. I always expect ministers to take seriously correspondence from members, whichever side of the House. It is totally unacceptable. Not if I can't make a meeting happen, but I do expect people's correspondence to be dealt with quickly and effectively. What I would say is the Treasury bench, I hope, will be listening very carefully, and I hope that we'll make contact with the honourable member. It is, as I said, not acceptable. I'm getting more and more people complaining about ministerial correspondence. We even heard of one that took 12 months. It's not good enough. It's not acceptable. The ministerial teams need to get their act together and make sure members of Parliament, quite rightly, get a reply timely. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank you for what you just said in response to the point of order from the member for Hayes and Harlington. Is there any way that you could ensure that a minister comes to this House to give a statement about the hunger strikers in the prison? I visited one of them yesterday, and I am deeply concerned about what is going on in our prisons, where people are being held for an inordinate length of time on remand when they have been delayed their access to justice.
I cannot guarantee I'm not responsible for what goes on within this chamber. I'm here to keep good order. What I would say is, quite rightly, as another senior member raising a point of order, the Treasury bench will have hoped they would that. Who knows? It might be there are different ways, and you both know how to do it, in order to ensure that this is brought to the attention of the chamber. I will leave that with you, knowing with the experience between you, I'd hate to add up how many years, but I think between you, you know the answer to the question. Right. Point of order, Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've looked through the agenda up until Christmas, and it appears that there is no opportunity for members to question either the police settlement or the local government settlement. Normally, there is a debate held, or at least a statement given on the floor of the House about both of these, so that members are able to question those. I understand that it seems to be the government's intention to put a written ministerial statement about this on the last day of Parliament, not giving us an opportunity to challenge. Given that local authorities are finalising their budgets for next year at the moment, they need to know how much funding they're going to get from the government. So could you use your good offices to encourage the government to actually come forward with at least a statement?
Can I just say, quite rightly, the point has been raised. Once again, I expect the Treasury bench to have taken it over. What I would say, as I said previously, there are other mechanisms that you may wish to consider using. I could see the shock horror of the opposition chief whip when you said it. You know, I was absolutely overwhelmed by the shock that came out. But allowing that to rest, I do take seriously. This House should hear it. A WMS is not the answer on something so serious. So let me say, Treasury bench should have heard it. We shouldn't shy away from this House. In fact, we should always come to the House first. I can't say it more than what I do. At some point, I would suggest once again that the ministerial code needs to be changed if people aren't going to take it seriously. Right, on that, we'll now lead it. We've now got presentation of bill. Sarah Dyke.
Reindeer licensing for exhibition bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 6th.
We'll take 1 and 12 together. Conversion practices are abuse, they cause long-lasting harm, and they have no place in our society. We will bring our comprehensive trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices before the House as soon as possible.
Remember the put together.
Mr. Speaker, LGBTQ rights campaigners have warned that the government's continued delay on banning conversion practices is dangerous and leaves vulnerable people without protection. Every month of delay leaves people exposed to practices the government itself accepts as are abusive. Will the Minister now set out a clear timeline and give a firm commitment that the government will not drag its heels on these any longer?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've just said, conversion practices are abusive and we will ban them. All LGBT people deserve to live freely and without fear, shame or discrimination. This legislation is a priority for the government as set out in the King's speech.
Thank you. Alex Burris-Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for that answer. The recent BBC report that more than 250 people were subjected to electric shocks in NHS hospitals between 1965 and 1973 in an attempt to change their sexual preferences and gender identity serves as a reminder of the urgent need for us to legislate in this area. And I'm proud the government is committed to a trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices. So can she assure me that the government will legislate on this as swiftly as possible, and will she meet with me to discuss this further?
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. Being gay or trans is not an illness that needs to be cured. The so-called treatments reported by the BBC are abhorrent, and my thoughts are with anyone who suffered. Abusive conversion practices are still happening today, and we will bring forward our draft legislation to ban them as soon as possible, and I'll, of course, be delighted to meet my honourable friend.
Becca Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Health Secretary's puberty blocker trial will stop the natural puberty of many young lesbians, putting them on a pathway to irreversible changes and a lifetime of medicalisation. What are the Minister's plans to stop this state-sanctioned conversion therapy?
Young people with gender incongruence need access to high-quality, safe and effective care. We are following the CAS review, which was clear that the evidence on the care for these children is lacking, and proposed this research to help provide it. We're now setting up clinical trials, as recommended by Baroness Cass, to build the evidence base we need to support vulnerable young people.
Chair of the State Committee, Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. LGBT+ communities, and particularly trans people, have many reasons to be fearful at the moment. Even though the government have committed to delivering a conversion therapy bill, trust is at an all-time low. So will the Minister tell us whether this bill is on target to come before this session, and if so, will she outline the details of pre-legislative scrutiny and what involvement there will be from the LGBT+ community?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognise the significant anxiety felt by many trans people at the moment, and I want to be clear, as the Supreme Court was, that protections for trans people are enshrined in law, and trans people deserve to live their lives with dignity, with respect and without shame. We are committed to delivering the trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices as per the King's speech as soon as possible, alongside strengthening LGBT hate crime laws and improving trans healthcare.
Sheila Hopkins.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Background should never be a barrier to getting on. That's why we're expanding Best Start family hubs, rolling out free breakfast clubs, expanding childcare and delivering on our moral mission to tackle child poverty by scrapping the 2-child limit, creating a fairer Britain where every child has the opportunity to succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I met with the 93% Club to hear more about their vital work to address the impact of social class on young people's career and life chances. I welcome our Labour government's steps to widen opportunities for those from lower socio-economic backgrounds, such as the government's match funding for criminal barrister pupilages. So can the Secretary of State outline what other action this Labour government is taking to level the playing field so that young people in Luton South and South Bedfordshire and across the country can access opportunities regardless of their background?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend who has long campaigned on these issues. The central driving mission of this Labour government is to ensure that background is no barrier to success. That's why we're expanding free school meals, lifting the 2-child limit, introducing a new youth guarantee and bringing in maintenance grants for disadvantaged students. And of course, we're also rolling out free breakfast clubs, and it was brilliant to visit Denby Primary School with her to see that open.
Vicky Slade.
Speaker, earlier this year I attended an amazing event at Dorset Museum called In My Shoes for care experienced young people. And they explained the importance of making care experience a protected characteristic, which we have done in many, many councils, including mine in Mid-Dorset North Pool. Will she take the same steps with the Cabinet colleagues to consider putting care experience as a protected characteristic?
Thank you, Madam Deputy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apologies. The Honourable Lady raises an important issue, and we are doing lots of work across government to make sure that we have better outcomes for care experienced young people who sadly are more likely to experience mental health difficulties or even end up in prison than other young people. I lead that work together with the Deputy Prime Minister to make sure that the voices of care leavers are heard, and it's why, for example, with the introduction of new targeted maintenance grants and the wider reforms that we're bringing to the higher education system, we're working right across government to make sure that all departments are pulling together.
So, Secretary of State Miriam Davis.
The founders of the Cambridge University Society of Women, Maeve, Serena and Thea, are in the gallery today. They are backing free speech in safe, women-only spaces and discussing women's concerns, pornography, female genital mutilation and misogyny. Mr. Speaker, would the Secretary of State agree that if the Labour government is to achieve its said mission of breaking down barriers to opportunity, it should never be controversial for a university society to champion women's rights?
Mr. Speaker, I have long campaigned and supported women's rights where it comes to the ability of women to meet together, to discuss the issues that matter to them, and also to have safe spaces for women, including around domestic violence. I used to run a women's refuge. I know how important it is that women have safety and security and are able to heal from trauma. But I would say to the Right Honourable Lady, we are having to address major challenges where it comes to violence against women and girls. Their record on this is shameful. We saw perpetrators let off, we saw crimes not go punished, and where it comes to rape in particular, it was all but decriminalised under her government.
Jane Kirkham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 3.
So, State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is important that everyone, including trans people, can access services that meet their needs, and I take that seriously. We are absolutely committed to upholding the Equality Act's protections that allow trans people to live free from discrimination and harassment. We are carefully considering the EHRC's draft updated code and ensuring that the proper processes are followed.
Jane Kirkham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for that answer. I have very vulnerable constituents who have raised concerns about the draft EHRC guidance on transgender people. Many are scared and fear rising transphobia and discrimination. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure that we protect the rights and dignity of everyone in society and support those groups who work with those vulnerable trans people?
I'm deeply sorry to hear about my honourable friend's constituents. On the wider issue she raises, it is of course vital that everyone, including trans people, can live free from harassment and discrimination and can access appropriate services. That's why we are carefully considering the EHRC's draft updated code, making sure the proper processes are followed. And of course the Equality Act upholds safeguards for trans people, and we are committed to it.
Christine Jolly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the Secretary of State's clarification, but with organisations like Girl Guiding UK and Women's Institute now saying that they have been forced to exclude the trans community against their will, how soon can we expect this guidance, which the Secretary of State says is being considered?
Mr. Speaker, as I've said many times in this House, I welcome the clarity of the Supreme Court ruling. Providers should follow it. The EHRC have given me a draft code of practice. We're working through it. It is a lengthy document, and we will take this further as soon as we can.
Mohammed Yazdi.
Oh, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will answer questions 4, 8 and 11 together. Our work to halve violence against women and girls in the course of a decade started the day that we entered government. We have already announced a series of cross-government measures to tackle these crimes, including launching our domestic abuse protection orders, which have already protected over 1,000 victims of domestic abuse since they were launched last November. Our transformative cross-government approach will be underpinned by a new strategy, which we will publish as soon as possible.
Mr. Speaker, Bedfordshire Police and Crime Commissioner is working hard to deliver government's mission to halve violence against women and girls, tackling complex domestic abuse cases and driving a 250% increase in case law disclosures. Yet women and girls face serious online harms, including violent pornography highlighted by Vanessa Burton and Ofcom. Given the link between online misogyny and real-world violence, what action will the government take to ensure tech companies properly protect women and girls from serious online harms?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that really important question. Making the online environment a safer place for women and girls is a priority for this government. The Online Safety Act has placed a requirement on tech platforms to proactively tackle the most harmful illegal content, much of which disproportionately affects women and girls, including from harassment and intimate image abuse. Ofcom have recently published guidance outlining further steps that services can take to make platforms safer for women and girls, but we are also developing a wider strategy in order to tackle this further.
Jessica Tull.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Shut It Down is an organisation set up by 2 teachers at Winton and Glenmore Academies in my Bournemouth West constituency. It aims to prepare teachers for the tough conversation and work with male pupils to tackle misogyny and promote positive masculinity and healthy relationships. So can the Minister tell me what more she and her department can do to support projects like this and tackle the culture of violence against women and girls at the earliest possible stages?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. Shut It Down and organisations like it are a brilliant tool. Schools should be a place where everyone feels safe and valued, and we want to counter misogynistic views by schools by teaching boys about respect, empathy and equality, Mr. Speaker. We will support teachers on how to deliver the revised statutory guidance on relationships, sex and healthy education, which strengthens consent on healthy relationships with free resources available, and we will be piloting a teacher training grant in 2026.
Sir Oldham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today marks the final day of the United Nations 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, which focused primarily on ending digital violence against women and girls. The domestic abuse charity Refuge has experienced a 62% increase in referrals of technologically facilitated abuse from last year. This abuse can take the form of stalking via tracking devices, non-consensual sharing of intimate images, and recording devices being used by abusers to monitor victims. So will the Minister confirm what steps she's taking with the Home Secretary to help tackle violence against women and girls with specific reference to technologically facilitated abuse?
The Honourable Lady is right, and Refuge do brilliant work in supporting victims of tech-based abuse. I've been there to their offices, I've seen their team working really hard on this. This government is determined to have a cross-government approach to this. I'm working really closely with the Home Office, DCIT, looking at how we can really get to the grips with this. We'll be publishing our cross-government Vogue strategy imminently, and there will be a specific reference to on tech abuse in that strategy.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government's dithering on grooming gangs has gone on for so long that it's now unlikely that any report into what's happened will be published before the next general election. So does the Minister think that this is acceptable, and will she commit to publishing interim findings before the next general election?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The grooming gang scandal was one of the darkest moments in this country's history, with vulnerable young people being failed time and time again. The Prime Minister, the Home Secretary and I are determined to finally get victims and survivors the answers that they need. And it was he, the Prime Minister, who brought the first ever major prosecution on the Asian grooming gangs. It was this government that implemented the statutory inquiry recommendations, and it is this government that has issued a national inquiry, and we will get on with supporting victims and girls.
Goldman, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the whole House agrees that women's safety is of paramount importance. In my constituency of Chelmsford, the City Council has helped to develop a women's safety charter, with local premises pledging their commitment to a range of training of staff to consider and prioritise women's safety as standard. The evidence shows that overwhelming perpetrators of violence against women and girls are not strangers, as some may have us believe, but they are men already known to their victims. So would the Minister agree with me that women's safety will be addressed best not through stoking division and fear, but instead supporting and funding initiatives like Chelmsford City Councils, where the real work to protect women and girls is done?
Thank you. I totally agree with the Honourable Lady, and can I commend Chelmsford Council's work in this regard. If we're really going to halve the levels of violence against women and girls over the course of a decade, this isn't just going to be for government departments and Whitehall to tackle. This needs everyone across the country taking action. Local initiatives like the one in Chelmsford doing great work, and I encourage all local councils and local businesses to get involved to change that culture, to really drive forward what we need in order to tackle this abuse.
Rachel Bassett.
Question 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and data about tribunal cases will continue to be collected in the usual way.
We know that disabled people are more likely to be impacted by unfair dismissals. Employees already have day one protections against discrimination, and recent developments in the Employment Rights Bill do not change that protection. This government is absolutely committed to supporting disabled people to thrive at work, including by introducing disability pay gap reporting and stronger flexible working rights.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Equality Act applies, we know that workers are often made unfairly dismissed as a result of the limit coming in at 2 years currently, 1 year under the last Labour government, and we know we're reducing it to 6 months. But the risk of disabled workers, ethnic minority workers and young workers being dismissed still holds. So will the government monitor unfairly dismissed workers under 6 months to ensure that their protected characteristics are not a feature for dismissal?
I thank my honourable friend for her tireless campaigning on this important issue. It is right that we ensure disabled people are protected at work. She may also wish to approach the Ministry of Justice as a department which collects data on protected characteristics across employment tribunals.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for that answer. Minister, many ladies, when they're dismissed unfairly, feel that they've been dismissed unfairly, whereas men would not have found themselves in that position. When it comes to equality, it's really important that ladies feel they get the same opportunity and the same fairness within the law. How can the Minister ensure that that happens for ladies, as against the present system, which seems to be unfairly dismissed towards them?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and he is absolutely right. Everybody should be able